into it. Okay?
Are we coming?
In verse 7, and we'll kind of briefly read back through maybe the first 7 verses to kind of pick up where we're at about the beginning of the year being changed and the Passover. And we know that this is leading up very shortly after the night of the first morning of the day that Israel exited Egypt. And there's one thing I wanted to comment on, and we're getting to it here a few weeks ago, and I prematurely handed out a handout about Exodus chapter 12 and verse 40 and 41, about how long was the children of Israel in Egypt. And I wanted to get to that and wanted to go through the handout. Don't know if we're going to get to that today, but if you still have that handout, please go back and read it and review it. And we're going to look at it in light of some other passage of Scripture. And I think the Apostle Paul clears up the meaning of this verse in his writings to the church at Galatians chapter 3. But anyway, pull that handout back out. I wish now I had waited, until now to hand it out. But I was thinking we'd be a lot further along than we are in this chapter. So it's taken a few weeks for us to even get to chapter 12. So I'll go back and look at that handout and read through it, because I think you're going to find it real interesting. We may mention that a lot of times when we study the Bible, we're learning the things that we think contradict what the Bible has to say, because we base it on tradition a lot of times. And yet when you read the Bible, you're going to find out that what we accept sometimes by tradition may not be the Word of God. And I'll use as the world calls it, the Christmas pageants, for example. Okay? Very often it's just accepted that there's 3 wise men. But there wasn't, was it? We know there was 3 gifts, wasn't there? But that doesn't mean there was 3 wise men. We also find depicted in those scenes where the shepherds are in the field, and they are in the field, okay? And they do come visit Jesus. But then you have the wise men walking in right behind them, right? Well, when you look at it from the Scriptures, the wise men did not come along to about maybe a year to a year and a half after that event, because the Bible says that Jesus was a young child when the wise men arrived there at the house. And it says that, okay? So there again, sometimes we look at things based on tradition and not what they actually are. And I just use that because that's one of the more common. There are other examples of that that we can run into and use. So just keep that in mind, that we're looking for thus saith the Lord upon the matter, and not maybe what men and Cecil B. DeMille's and the Ten Commandments and others have put together. So we want to keep that in mind as we study these things, that's what we're seeking for. And sometimes it takes a little while for us to think about it. Those of us that were raised in the denominational world, so to speak, it's a shock and startling thing that you learn about the Bible. Now, one of the things you find that the Bible teaches one church. Well, what does the world traditionally teach? There are many, right? So see, they base it upon what the Bible says and not upon what man may say. And sometimes it takes a little thought and study to figure out what's going on, who is saying what, where, and what is right. So anyway, pull that handout back out. It's not an apologetics press, and it's how long were the children of Israel in Egypt? And I think you're going to be real surprised at what's said about all that. When you look at it on a thus saith the Lord basis, not upon what man may say it is. So anyway, technically, like I said, we're supposed to begin somewhere around verse 7. We talked about the Passover lamb, the beginning of the new year, and I'm just going to briefly read back to that, then we'll move on. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of the month they shall take unto them every man their lamb according to the house of their father, a lamb for a house. And so we find that this was going to be a new beginning for them. The Passover was going to be a very important holiday. It was going to be a very important reference time in the history of Israel. And so we talked about that a good bit. Also, we talked about the Passover lamb, that they're to bring this Passover lamb into the house and on the 10th of the month. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. And so, in summation, we find that if there were those that the household was too small for a lamb, or didn't have a lamb, or things of that nature, God always makes a way. God makes a way, and God is making a way for those that may have been lacking, or the household may have been too small for a lamb, and we talked about that. And of course we know the lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year, and you shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. And we made a brief mention about that God wants the best. He don't want the second best of anything. It's going to be a lamb without spot and without blemish. It's going to be a male that's born of the first year of that flock. Also, what was interesting, and a lot of times you pick up on things, no matter how many times maybe you've read through it or studied it, that the word lamb very often is not only defined as that of a sheep, but notice what it says here. Or from a goat. So it could be either or. And, we find a lot of times we limit our thought pattern sometimes based on what words mean. And it's important to do that, to go by what words mean. But sometimes things are used in a generic sense. So we find it was going to be a sheep, or it could come from a goat. And so we find that you will keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And we talked about that verse right here about this is really a picture of Jesus becoming the Passover lamb. The lamb was going to be taken inside, and then the 14th day of the same month it was going to be killed. So that just shows you how a household, when you bring something in like that, can become attached to something, and that which you attach to is going to be the sacrifice. And that's like it under Christ. He came into the world, and he became a part of the family of man physically, didn't he? And there were those, because of his work and his mission and who he was, that was closely attached to Jesus. But in the end, what did he have to do? He had to be sacrificed, didn't he? The blood had to be shed, no matter what the attachments were. And there was people he got attached to, wasn't he? Lazarus and Mary and Martha, when we went through John and we went through Luke, we talked about that, how he had made associations here on this earth just like we do. So he knows what it's like to lose associations, doesn't he? And so we find this was a state of the, and I want you to notice something else it says here about the Passover lamb that we didn't mention because we was trying to get through. When were they to kill it? In the evening, wasn't it? When was Jesus born? It was in the evening, wasn't it? Early part of the night. It's kind of interesting that the parallels that you get in this as you look at it and you begin to study it, and we talked about that, about this is a picture of Christ becoming the sacrificial lamb. And so in verse 7, we have the picture of what they were supposed to do with this lamb and with the blood. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper door post of the house, wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh that night, roast with fire, and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat none of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head, his legs, and with the appearance thereof. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the evening. That remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. So this is how the lamb was to be prepared, how it was to be eaten, and things of that nature. And so we find that, did you notice something about this lamb? About eating the lamb and the unleavened bread? What did we do today?
Lord's Supper.
You see the shadow of it that's going on. Now, there are things in here that we don't use in the Lord's Supper as we come over into the New Testament, but the principle, the picture of it is laid down here. As we said, there are types and shadows in this that we can spend a great deal of time on as we study it. Jeremy, you'd like to get something?
Let's say verse 7, you see it talks about the post. Well, I think that's symbolic of the cross. Blood is on those posts.
Oh, yeah.
And this post is going to save them from physical death, but Christ's post is going to save us from eternal death.
There you go. That is a shadow of it, isn't it? That the way it's done is a type of the cross. It's the blood that's shed on the cross. And I'm trying to think of a song we used to sing that came to me just momentarily, and it's about the blood on the post. Maybe as I talk, it'll come to me. But anyway, yes, that is correct. So that's a shadow, isn't it, of what was to come. So all this is a type of shadow. And so we find, as we come on down, another interesting verse here is, be ready. Notice what he says here in verse 11. And thus shall ye eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. How were they to eat it?
Ready to go somewhere.
Ready to go.
Because they were about to be.
They were about to depart, aren't they? Why didn't they? We're going to see there's a reason that the bread was unleavened too. And that was to make, because they didn't have time to wait for the bread to do its thing. Go ahead, Jerry.
I see this also play into, we need to be ready to go when we accept the blood on the post. We need to
That's it.
prepare
Well, the blood is there.
ourselves the best we can and then continue to grow in faith. And then the unleavened bread, just a side note, it travels better. Because the yeast in it, actually, that's why your bread goes moldy. If you ate unleavened bread, you keep it for years.
Right. And that was something, too, that comes into this, and you're going exactly where I was going, so we'll just pick up right there. How about that? There's also a health thing involved here, too, about that unleavened bread and then traveling, and you just brought it out, about how that yeasted bread will mold very rapidly, and they're not going to have time to do all this, so we're going to find unleavened bread is going to be a very important part of their diet, isn't it, too? And we know there are other things that's an important part of their diet. So, yes, and this is why this was done. You be ready. When that blood's put up there and you eat that lamb and that unleavened bread, you better be ready to go. And that's teaching us today, while the blood is present, we better take opportunity of it happening. One of the things that some of the commentators that you read, there is some thought here. What about if there were those that did not put the blood over the doorpost? Were there those there in the mix that may not have put the blood over the doorpost? They did not believe this. It would only be speculation, but the thought would be that irregardless, if you didn't do it, what was going to happen? Firstborn's going to die. That would be for Israel too, wouldn't it? Now, we don't stop and think about that, how important this was to obey. You know? To obey. Brother Con?
I was just going to say that it's an act of obedience.
That's it.
In other words, if you don't obey, you're going to pay.
Well, that's one way to look at it. That sounds like a modern statement, don't
You
it?
don't obey, you're going to pay.
That's it. You don't obey, you don't
It's an
pay.
act of obedience.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
They had plenty of time to obey and do what the Lord said do. But they were commanded to do it hurriedly and in a haste, because that's the way the Lord operates.
Right.
In a case like this.
Right.
He went for all them I think it's 600,000 left.
it is, yeah, hopefully we'll get to that. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll probably get to that number here, Rick.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get to that too.
But anyway, that was the act of obedience, being able to obey what the Lord said do.
Right.
And that's His saving power.
Right.
And that's your individual personal salvation.
Right. And so we find that this is to be done. This is the Lord's Passover. So we know the Passover is being instituted. If you look back at this and you want to put a timeline on it, we're dealing with something that's now taking place about 700 years or so after the flood, and yet the Passover now is going to be instituted up until Jesus changes it there when he eats the last Passover. And so we find it's going to be in effect from 1446 or thereabouts BC to AD 33. So you're going to have about 1,500 years of this Passover being observed before Christ comes. So the shadow now is being painted here toward what was going to be in the future. And we talked about that the Genesis of the Bible, really we're still in parts of the Genesis of the Bible. It's a roadmap that leads us to where we are at today. Paul said the law was a schoolmaster to do what? Lead us to Christ. And this is what we're seeing here. All this is leading us to Christ. How did we get here where we're at today? How did the church get here? That's what we're studying. This is how it got here. This was in the heart and mind of God in eternity. When I say eternity, I'm not talking about the future eternity. There was a time prior to where there was no time as we know it. God was in eternity, the Son and the Spirit. Jeremy?
I'd say this kind of parallels back to chapter 10. Because Pharaoh's like, next time I see you, Moses and Aaron, I think I'll just put you to death.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Moses says, well, you're not going to see my face
Yeah.
again.
I think in some ways when you look at that,
It turns, you know, his...
in some ways when you look at that statement and you study it, you can almost say Pharaoh signed his own fate when he said that.
Yes.
I mean, if you really study and think about all the events that's led up to this, Pharaoh actually signed his own people's death warrant, didn't he? He sure did. He sure did. And
We're coming to that season. Next Sunday will be.
right,
We'll be in I always call it the Passover,
right,
because I don't even like the thought of it being Easter.
right. Well, there was no such holiday anyway to the Jews. I mean, it's still foreign to them. They don't know anything about that holiday.
That's some of the man-made stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, right. We just assume,
We
see.
know what it means where that goes, but still,
Right, right.
it looks like somebody trying to change something.
So, a lot of the holidays, if you will, since Brother Con said that we recognize maybe in the world, when I say we in the world, I mean that we recognize as people in general, okay? We're not recognized in the Bible, were they? These people had no idea what an Easter service was, as a world calls it. You know what a Passover was. Okay? So, but anyway, all that's in a whole different lesson structure, isn't it? But anyway, notice what he says here. This is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt. This night will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And sometimes we don't think about the beast being involved, how the animal world gets involved when man becomes so corrupt. But it corrupts the animal world too. We see that in the book of Genesis, didn't we? In the days of the flood. What also had been corrupted? The animal world. Well, who's in control of the animal world? Man. So we find man's impact is on nature too. And we can see that a lot of times, can't we? I mean, we can see what happens if you cut down so much of the forest and you don't go back and reseed it or whatever, and a great flood comes, well, what happens? Things wash away, don't they? So you can still see the impact of man's influence in the natural world. And that's what you're seeing here, Jeremy.
You could say each Sunday we have a Passover.
Doing that?
Each Sunday we have
Oh, yeah, we do have a Passover.
did it with the...
That is correct. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, what do? Show the Lord's death till he comes. You know, and we read that very often, what Paul said to the church of Corinth. You know, Jesus instituted the Lord's Supper, or our Passover, if you will. Okay? Because if we're washed in the blood of Christ, what is going to happen to us in the end? The death angel is going to pass over us. Not the physical death angel. We're all going to have to suffer that. Physical, but we're talking about the final death will be passed over. Why is that? Because we painted our doorposts with what?
Blood of Jesus.
The blood of the Lamb. That's right. That's right. Very good point. So, oh yeah, that's a lot. And I suppose, as we went through Genesis and we looked at all these analogies and parallels and shadows, I suppose if we could hover right here, just like we did in the law, there's a lot of types and shadows in this to lead us to Christ, isn't there? There sure is. So, this is why Bible study is important. Daniel?
Also something to this haste, that they eat the Passover in haste. Well, Jesus and the apostles eat the Passover, and immediately he's captured and crucified.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He was ready to go.
Ready to go. That's the whole point, isn't it? Yeah. There's another shadow, okay? So see, as you look at this, and you sit back and you open your mind and you think about it, you see a lot of that. And, as we said before, if we went back and started in Genesis chapter 1 and came to where we're at today, probably the notes that I've taken and the literature that I have would be probably totally different. Would it be different because something changed? Or would it be different because as you think about it, you see more and more of it? That's why Paul told Timothy to study the Word. It's amazing of what's in there. It's really amazing. So anyway, he's going to pass through and will smite all the firstborn, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt. Now notice that coming back into play. Remember we said that as we looked at this, that all these different gods attacked, all these different plagues that Moses did attacked what too? They're gods. They're gods. So it don't matter. If you're worshiping this God, you're not going to be protected. The God of that firstborn is going to die too. That just shows the power of the Lord and what he's trying to do. And we saw where some of the Egyptian people recognized it, didn't they? Because some of his advisors, some of his servants, and some of the people said, hey, wait a minute, Pharaoh, you need to let this man go. Said, you're going to destroy Egypt. So there were those that we studied week before last that recognized the fact of what was going on. And yet through obstinance and stubbornness and hardness of heart, Pharaoh chose to do what? My way or highway. Well, sometimes my way gets me put in the highway. And that's what's happening here. Here's where we're going to get him put in the highway. Okay? And so we find here that this is going to happen, and I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you, verse 13, when I smite the land of Egypt. So God is telling them it's time. Judgment's coming. You be ready. Don't let anything impede you. You be prepared. When you eat the Passover lamb, the unleavened bread, don't put no dough in it. This is why you use unleavened bread. You won't have time for this. Because when this angel passes through, guess what Pharaoh is going to do? You ain't going to have to worry about leaving. He's going to tell you to leave. So, and this is what this is leading to. And this day shall be unto you a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. It's real interesting sometimes when you look at how things are structured and what is said here. And we know this was memorial. And we know they kept the Passover. That was one of their main holidays, whichever many, but this was one of the main holidays that they ate in Jerusalem, wasn't it? This was a big deal to them. And so we find that they were to do this and keep it throughout your generations, generation after generation. This is going to have to be kept. This is what I expect, okay? What about that forever? There's a religious group, and I won't call their name. Most of you have probably dealt with them some when they come knock on your door. But they play a lot on this word forever. Because several times it's used in the Bible, one of the ones that they really like to play on is for the heavens and earth are going to last forever. Okay? Talking about this physical earth. Is it going to last forever? What about that thought? What is that denoting here? lasting forever. Does that mean we still need to keep it today? No. Now, we use that term every day. It's kind of interesting when you look at words and thoughts and things. We don't have much of a problem with listening to each other talk and understanding things, do we? But when it comes to religion, it's like, we're straining to that, they will want to swallow a candle for some reason, right? And it has that way a lot of things. We understand what the word belief means in our everyday talk, don't we? Jeff, if I believe I got a flat tire, what am I going to do? I want to take action on it. I want to change it. If I believe that I'm sick, what am I going to do? Take action. I'm going to go to the doctor. Right? We practice that and don't even think about it. But Jeremy, when it comes to religion, guess what we do? I believe, and that's it. You ain't got to take action. All you got to do is believe. Why is it we don't understand that word in religion? That belief denotes and dictates what? It does in everything else. It did in the Bible. When they believed, they took action. We have many examples in the actions of the apostles, where the action was taken. Over a 30-year span, we have action being taken. And yet, when it comes to religion, the brakes get put on. What if Moses had said, you haven't got to put that blood over the doorpost. All you got to do is believe that it will wash you clean and that you will be saved. Will they believe? But what do they have to do? Do they have to take some action? Yeah. Belief is an action word. It is not a dormant word. And we don't have a problem with that in our language or any other language that I'm aware of with the word belief, except when it comes to religion. Jeremy says, I believe the radio is going to go down, guys, when he gets to work in the morning. I believe the radio is going down. All the signs are there. I believe it. But if Jeremy don't take action, what's going to happen to the radio, Jeremy? Simple it. But we make it so complicated, don't we, Brother Con? Make it so complicated. So, what did they have to do? They had to do what God instructed them to do. Belief dictates action. Belief shows forth faith, doesn't it? That's where all this is leading. And so we find that he said, I will pass over you when I smite the land. What about the spell? I got off on a tangent. We use that word every day. This is where I was going with this, Jeff. Eric, I get off like over here sometimes when I have to look down at this paper once. I do that because, I get kind of, what about that? What does that mean? We use that term every day. Eric buying a new truck. He's so tickled to death, get that good truck, a new truck. He said, boy, this will last me forever. We made that statement happen. We go down the road and we buy us a new refrigerator. And we took and get us a new refrigerator. We tried to figure out old refrigerator. We had to spend more money on the old refrigerator. We could have been bought us a refrigerator. We took it with that. What do we tell people? Oh, this refrigerator is going to last me forever. Do we really believe that refrigerator is going to last forever? No. That's right. It will last its useful purpose. And we understand that in everyday language, don't we? Daniel's over here thinking, I'm going to have this job forever. What does he mean, I'm going to have this job forever? Does he mean he's going to be there forever and ever and ever and ever and ever? He ain't going to die, still have that job?
It seems like it.
I know it seems like it sometimes. No. Until its useful purpose is done. He may look across the fence tomorrow and somebody offering $300,000 in a company car and a free home, Well, guess what he's going to do? The forever showing up gone, ain't it? But it's until its usefulness is done. It's the heavens and earth going to last forever. No. Until the usefulness of it is done. That's what he's talking about here. This is going to last about what is useful for the plan of God. It's what he's getting at here. And so we find in verse 15, 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. And even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first of the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Get the sin out. Leaven is likened unto sin here. So you're to get the sin out beginning the first day that you start this. And until it ends, you're not eating anything but unleavened bread. You're to purge out that old. Eric, suppose I was going to stop here and preach a lesson about leaven, and I tell you, Jeff, to be a new lump. You're going to think, Bob, you don't know they calling people no lump. Well, that's the Bible. I just quoted 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 7. So let's try to look at that for just a minute, about the leaven. 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 7. My point is, we can be a new lump. 1 Corinthians 5. Notice what Paul said here to the church of Corinth. Purge out the old leaven. Purge out that old sin. Is that not what the charge was here, to purge out that old leaven? That if you don't purge out that old leaven, what's going to happen? You're going to be cut off from Israel. That means you're going to die. You're not coming out of here. Okay? Notice what he says here. Purge out, therefore, the old leaven, that ye may be what? A new lump. Actually, I don't know if Eric remembers it, many years ago I got a lesson titled Be a New Lump. Okay? So that's scripture. Be a new lump. What's he talking about? Be a new lump. You got to be that lump that is unleavened. See? Notice what he says here. Has ye all unleavened, for even Christ, woe, Jeremy, here's when you was out a while ago about us eating the Passover, right? Our Passover is sacrificed for us. Who is our Passover? Christ. Real interesting when you see the parallel in all of this. See, Paul even, has in mind about things that went on under the old law and under the Passover and things like that. And so we found, as we look at this, that if this is not done, if that old sin is not purged out and you become that new lump, notice what he says here. He said, we shall be cut off from the church. Doesn't really say church, though, does it? It says Israel, doesn't it? Well, who is Israel?
Spiritual Israel.
Right, exactly. Right. It's the same thing. Then the question becomes, and if you stop and think about it, now from Genesis to Revelation, when did the thought pattern that God had in mind ever change? We talk about holding God's unchanging hand. Yeah, he let one of it play out in physical to get us to where we can have the spiritual and the word today. Just remember that statement, that the law is a schoolmaster to do what? Lead us where? To Christ. And that's what we're seeing here. This is where this is leading. It's just going to take another, 1,500 years or thereabouts to come about. But this is where it's all headed. What we're seeing here, as we said before, there's another passage of Scripture we need to keep in mind. What we're seeing here is a fulfillment of Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15. This is the roadmap, this is the path that God took to fulfill Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15. And it's that simple. Go ahead, Jared.
I was going to say, even if you look at the word Israel, it means God preserves or one prevails through God.
Yeah, it's really talking about the church, isn't it?
It is. And then I'm going to back up, if that's all right, on the firstborn. I take that to be the firstborn son.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
And I base that on verse 24.
Right. I was going to quote that, but I may get it wrong. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. I shall put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed, it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. This is what we're fulfilling here, showing how this happened, how all this worked to fulfill that verse early on. And this is just a part of the pattern and the program to lead us to Christ. And notice in verse 16, and in the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and in the seventh day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. So there was going to be a period of rest here in this. And we know that God rested on the seventh day, didn't he? Today, what do we do on the first day of the week? Partake of the Lord's Supper. We eat our Passover, don't we? For the lack of a better term, maybe, but I think that's appropriate since we've got our minds in tune with the types and shadows that we have here. So we find that the plan in God's heart and mind is still intact. Normally, what's associated with the first day of the week? The day of rest, isn't it? That's associated with it, even though we know that that's not a strict commandment today, but generally that's associated with it, isn't it? And so we see the thought pattern is still intact. And so we find in verse 17, and you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this same day I have brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe this day in your generation by an ordinance forever. So he just repeats the importance of this, and by them observing it, is just to show that I brought you out of the land of Egypt. And he did. And so we find in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. So he's showing here again what he expects of them to do about this unleavened bread. It's that the memorial, part of the memorial of remembering them being brought out of Egyptian bondage. The blood, the bread, and all these things. What is this today? Is it not a memorial of us being brought out of bondage? It's a reminder of the blood that was on the doorpost. Or in this case, the cross. So we find that these things are leading us to this picture of Christ Jesus. And notice what it says here. Verse 9, I think it'll be verse 19. 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses, for whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Well, this was going to be a strict observance, wasn't it? You know, this is important that you remember what I got to read that book first. Ye shall eat nothing leavened, in all your habitations shall ye eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, draw out, take your lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. So he is told them and given them instructions on how this is to be done, what God has expected. And now, Jeremy, somebody come along and says, well, all I need is my dough and all I got is leaven. That's a change, isn't it? Is God going to accept that? Well, what about substitutions today? Does God accept substitutions? You know, Moses had already demonstrated to Pharaoh, Pharaoh wasn't going to call the shots on how we were to worship. God had told us he wanted us to go a 3 days journey out in the wilderness. He did that to separate them from the influence of the Egyptians and from the things that were going on so they could have their minds centered and focused on what? The sacrifice, right? They were to take the men, the children, the women, the cattle, and all. Okay? That's what God said, right? Well, what did Pharaoh come back? When Pharaoh decided to kind of see if he could appease Moses a little bit. All your men, you know. What did Moses say? And what God said. Then Pharaoh said, all the children can go. How about the women and cattle? What God say? See, Pharaoh was trying to get Moses to do what? Compromise, substitute. You know, you getting 75% of it right, Moses. You know, God's going to overlook that point. It's not said like that, but that's what it means, okay? God's going to overlook the other 2/3. You just do part of it or half of it, you'll be all right. Because the heart of the intent is what you're after, right? Well, no, it doesn't work that way. Moses did not compromise that, did he? Here, God is telling him, you're not going to compromise this. Okay? Because compromise is going to mean sure death. So you take your lamb according to your families and kill the Passover. Now that is a specific command, isn't it? So God told them what to do. For the Lord will pass through and smite the Egyptians, and when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door, and will not suffer the destroyer to come in into your houses to smite you. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop right there because it's time for us to ring the buzzer, and we'll kind of pick up right there with that thought about the blood on the doorpost and the death angel passing over.
That's what he said. He's like,